Welcome back to the One Decision Away podcast. I'm your host, Elijah Meng. In this one, I am going to be answering a question on my previous video from my friend Justin, who I met. He's from South Africa. I met him traveling in Greece. And so I really appreciate you, Justin, for continually tuning into the podcast and, leaving your comments and questions and contributions. I appreciate it. So to dive into this one, Justin left a really good question on off of some things that I talked about in the previous episode, which I will put it up here. The question is, do you think that fulfillment is the antithesis of ambition? Would seeking and finding true inner fulfillment lead to less ambition or energy for change? Or do you think the nature/direction of your ambition just changes, but the amount of energy still stays the same? Now, this one is really good because it's actually something that I've focused on and thought about quite a bit, because the question came up for me initially as well. When I realized that I had this whole, I was very driven to achieve at a very high level and make a shitload of money and things like that. I noticed that it was more of a craving than it was an actual desire. It's because I was in such a place of pain in myself that I believed that would be the solution to all my problems. But the thing is that I was looking at that as like the blanket solution to all of my problems, but the majority of the problems I was actually experiencing, which I didn't realize at the time, but they were all internal. They were all emotional. They were all programming. They were all self-image and self-belief, low self-esteem, things like that. Just all this bullshit that I had picked up over the years. False beliefs about myself, a lot of trapped emotions, like I talked about in the previous episode, which was, what was it? The 3 major blocks to your internal peace and how to release them for more fulfillment. And that's one of them is the emotions, because that's a huge thing that I don't think people pay enough attention to. So in asking myself these questions and having these internal realizations of where I was truly being driven from, like this craving and where it was coming from, it shifted my whole perspective on what I was doing. And I realized, okay, I could go make this money, but that's not going to solve the internal emotional problems. And I need to go do the inner work. I need to focus on that. And so here's the thing. I want to really get into this. And get deep into this question, because it's something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I've thought very deeply about and studied and done a lot of inner work around this myself and with other people. So the other day I was reading a post on Instagram or Threads or something, and I haven't read the book yet, but it was about the book Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And this person who posted it said in that book, they mentioned something about how Tony Robbins said, and he may have coined this, I'm not really sure, but he said that we are either running away from pain or we are running towards pleasure. And the majority of the time, people are running away from pain. And so it's very obvious in the situation that I was in, I was running away from pain. So I'm going to share a chart. You may have seen the chart on the thumbnail of this video. I'm going to share that chart in a second and describe it, lay it out to you. But the thing is that we are always being driven from something. And typically it's emotional, because we are emotional beings. That's how we operate. I feel like emotions are a big point of the whole human experience, because it helps us to navigate the human experience. And it also allows us to, like I said in the last video, create fulfillment, experience fulfillment, which I believe is a big point of life in general, because if you're not doing it for a greater emotional experience, which is your emotions determine the quality of your experience of life, right? So if you're living and your baseline emotional state is way down here, it's anxiety, it's pressure, it's stress, and all of those things, then, you're not going to have a great experience of your life. However, if you're operating up here and, your main drivers, your main baseline emotional state is peace, it's joy, it's inner fulfillment, satisfaction. Like, it doesn't take a lot to satisfy you because you're already satisfied, and everything that you do in your life is just adding on top of that and contributing to life and to the world and to others and to yourself from that place of satisfaction. You think you would be a better leader in that case? You think you would be better able to lead and manage and guide other people to do the same thing so that they can experience their greatest levels of fulfillment and satisfaction as well? Yes, absolutely. But the question comes in is, when you do that, does it take away your ambition? Does it take away your drive? Here's the thing. If you are driven from a place of insecurity, then yes, it will probably take away your drive until you find something new to replace it with. And sometimes that replacement is automatic, just in the process of letting go of that motivator of running away from pain. You kind of naturally start to move up the scale into a state of maybe you're motivated more for, instead of running away from pain, running away from the past challenges that you experienced. Maybe you grew up and you and your family were broke, and you had to like really work for everything that you got, and you didn't have a lot to start off with. Well, you might get to a point where you no longer have to run from that fear of getting back to that point or living your life in that way. You don't have to run from that fear of being broke anymore. And so maybe now you're more driven by achievement, by self-gain, which is the second part of this chart. And you are more driven to achieve for a sense of personal satisfaction. And so it may be winning as well. You want to win. And often this has something to do with pride and status. So it is still partially ego driven, which isn't a bad thing. Like when I talk about this whole scale, this chart right here, the top is not better than the bottom. The bottom is not better than the top. They are just simply different experiences at this point in your life. So right now you might be driven by fear, pain, insecurity, escape, and like trying to escape something. And you have this insecurity deep down, and you're trying to reach for a place of significance because you feel insecure about who you are. And maybe you haven't addressed those things deeply yet and gone deeply within yourself, which is why the inner work is so important. Like if you're operating from that place of insecurity disguised as like a high achiever kind of paradigm, then you're going to find yourself running into some blocks. You're going to find that when you achieve your goals, you're not as satisfied or fulfilled or happy with your accomplishments as you thought you would be before you started working on it and as you were working towards that goal. You're going to find that you just return back to the place that you're operating, that you're being motivated by. It doesn't matter what you do, what you achieve, you will return back to that place. So here's what often happens in a lot of high achievers and a lot of executives, CEOs, owners, founders, a lot of influential people, a lot of successful people, is they will create tremendous amounts of success, and they do a fantastic job at it. Maybe you're like really good at building and growing and scaling companies. But then like you get there and you get this hit of dopamine that you worked for, that you earned. And then after, it's like you sell your company, and what do you do now? Like you feel depressed, like you don't feel satisfied. It's like you need something else now to drive you. And it's because you've operated from this place probably for your whole life or for a long time. And then you get there, you get to where you want it to go, but you haven't updated your software. You might have updated your hardware, your habits, your work ethic, how much time and effort and efficiency you're putting in your work days. But maybe you haven't updated the software, which is the motivator. It's the emotional aspect. It's the intrinsic motivator of why do you want to do anything? Like, why do you want to do anything in your life? And the misconception here is that when you get to a point where you're fulfilled and you're satisfied, you have no more drive. You have no more ambition. And so the reason I say that if you are operating from insecurity, then yes, you will probably lose your drive, at least for a little bit, when you get to that point. And that's when something like hiring a coach like me comes in, because we can upgrade that software and completely change where you're operating from. So if we take another look at this scale, when I'm speaking of all these things, I do want to make a point that the second and third ones down are very interconnected, actually, because you might be operating from the third level of fear, pain, insecurity. You're trying to escape something. Like you've never really had a strong sense of self, like a strong self-esteem or self-image. And so unconsciously, you're building on the pride that you do have. You're trying to achieve more significance and status in your achievements. It's still centered around personal gain because you're trying to escape this inner insecurity that you feel. And by achieving more, you're not going to get there. It's not going to work. That's the illusion of it. But when you do the inner work, when you address those things, and when you work through all of the things that are creating that insecurity, that anxiety, that depression, that high pressure that you put on yourself, beating yourself up constantly internally if you're underperforming, by your extreme standards of performance, right? I know this because I've literally lived my entire life with extreme standards of performance for myself, and high standards of achievement, things like that. So you're gonna get there, and then that's like the previous example. You get there and then you're depressed, and you come back to that state that you started in. So I hope all of this is making sense. However, there comes a big shift when you get to that third level, because when you're no longer running away from something, or literally running away from the chains that are dragging and pulling you down and holding you back, you exert less effort to do more, because you're not constantly having this whole internal battle with yourself around all of the unaddressed, unacknowledged baggage that you're carrying with you. This is like going on a hike and carrying a 45-pound backpack. You're going on a backpacking trip or something, and you're carrying this 5 to 7, maybe even 10, 15 miles into the mountains, versus carrying a light pack, just a small backpack. You have maybe a couple snacks and some water and a towel or something if you're going to take a dip at the top of the mountain, right? And you can move a lot easier. You feel a lot lighter. You feel more energized because you're not dragging this big pack, right? Most people, most high achievers, are carrying a big backpack with them of all the baggage from the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life. And that's why it makes things so hard. That's why there's so much extra stress and pressure every single day that you're doing what you do, because it's not actual objective pressure and stress. It's subjective, based on the experience that you're creating within yourself, based on everything that you're holding on to within yourself. So when you can release all that stuff, when you can let go of all that stuff, and when you can align yourself with a higher motivation of love, contribution, purpose, service, passion, then you're going to be playing a whole different game. You're not just in it for your personal gain and personal achievement and the sense of significance that you get out of that. You're in it for something bigger than yourself. You're in it for a contribution to a higher purpose. You're in it, you're doing something meaningful to you. You're doing something that lights you up. You're doing something that excites you. Just, if you've read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, you know that meaning is a big part, and you probably know this already without reading that book. Meaning is a big part of what drives us in life, right? So at the lower levels, the meaning that is driving you, it might be coming from, you just don't want to give your kids the life that you had growing up, of struggle, of a lot of suffering, of a lot of pain, and things that you would probably rather leave in the past and not bring up, not look at or address, right? But the thing is, you need to address those things in order to move forward and get to this level of love and contribution and purpose and service and passion and joy. You're doing something that it literally is just an extension of you, of what you're great at, of what you're passionate about. And literally in doing that, just your presence alone attracts people to you who have a shared mission, who have they just admire your passion, or they have some kind of shared thing with you where you guys can both align under one mission, and then you're leading a movement. But it doesn't have to be that big either. It could be something small, like this purpose and service, and it could just be about giving the best life that you can to your family. It could be about giving them the gift of internal freedom. It could be so many different things, and I'm not just gonna like spout out a bunch of different things, because then I'm just guessing. You know what it is for you. You know what you're passionate about. You know what, like, maybe you don't want to do the same work that you're doing anymore, and you want to step into another level of your life. You want to step into another level of purpose in your life, of meaning, because meaning drives you. So for as long as you are being driven by insecurity, then yes, you will probably lose a little bit of ambition or drive when you heal and let go of the pain that's driving you. However, there's a lot to look forward to on the other side. You literally just feel lighter every single day of your life because you are lighter. You don't have so much dense, stuck energy in your body, in your energy system, your energy field. Everything is energy. If you're not aware of that, you should definitely tune into that. Definitely learn more about it because it's important. A lot of times energy work is dismissed as woo-woo, wacko stuff. And I used to think the same thing until it changed my life. And so it's a very real thing that we need to acknowledge and address if we truly want to create and live at our highest levels of fulfillment, service, contribution, love, passion, and create the greatest relationships that we can create. Because life is about relationships. Life is about fulfillment. And life is also about achieving and creating what you want to achieve, what you want to create in your life, what you want to experience, right? So it's not that any of these things are bad on this chart. If you're achieving solely for personal gain and it's mainly ego driven and it's from pride and you're seeking more status and significance because, let's not forget this, because you feel insignificant deep down, you need something to try and fill that void, but you're going to keep running into the same thing until you realize that the void is internal and you need to go do the internal work directly on it in order to actually get to what you're seeking, in order to get to the feeling that you think achieving is going to give you, when really it's healing and letting go of that shit. That's what's going to give you that feeling. And then your achievements are even greater. But you don't depend on your achievements for a sense of personal satisfaction. You don't depend on your achievements for a greater level of fulfillment or for that hit of enjoyment and satisfaction and dopamine in your life, because you're already satisfied. Life itself is satisfying to you, just being alive. And so everything else is icing on the cake. That's what this is about. So no, Justin, I do not think that fulfillment is the antithesis of ambition unless you're solely and mainly driven by these lower motivators of escape, of insecurity, of pain, of fear of returning to that place that you were once at, or just a little bit higher, but still hand in hand with that last one is the personal achievement, seeking significance, seeking a higher level of status, seeking to be perceived at a higher level in the eyes of other people, right? All of those things are big drivers for many people. However, I don't think it is like the enemy or anything of ambition, because let me tell you, like I've done this, though I still find myself operating sometimes. Like I'll sometimes notice I'm slipping back down into being solely focused on personal achievement or gain, or looking to create more and more success so that I can like get more of a guarantee of not repeating the past and the struggles of the past, of my childhood, how I grew up and everything, lack, scarcity, all of that, stress, an abundance of stress there was. But so seeking and finding true inner fulfillment might actually lead to more energy for change. Think on that. Consider it. You don't have to agree with me, but just consider it. And I actually love the way that you phrased the last part of your question. Do you think the nature and direction of your ambition just changes, but the amount of energy still stays the same? I think the nature and direction of your ambition will change, yes. But depending on where you're operating from, the amount of energy will grow even more the more fulfilled you are, because you have access to more of your life force and energy. And like when you're operating from a place where you know that you are inherently worthy and intrinsic, and you're not just like consciously telling yourself that, like all these affirmations you see everywhere of you are enough, oh, you are good enough, blah, blah, blah. It's like all of that is so bullshit, because it's often people who don't subconsciously believe that they're enough telling themselves consciously that they're enough, which I don't think that's bad. I think that's great. I don't always use affirmations, and there are many ways that affirmations actually don't work and actually provide the opposite results that we're looking for in speaking affirmations to ourselves. And so you have to be a little wary of how you're going about that, because it could actually produce the opposite effect that you want. And that's not good. We don't want that. So what I'm speaking of is operating from a place where you subconsciously know it has sunken in deeply. You've released all the other stuff that was telling you otherwise, and you subconsciously know you are inherently worthy. You have inherent value. I am speaking particularly to men with this one, especially high achievers, because there's this underlying motivation of creating value externally. But in creating value, when we seek to create more and more and more value, you have to be careful, because there often might be an underlying motivator of seeking to create more external value because we don't believe deep down that we are inherently worthy and valuable. We don't see or know our value. So now I'm not saying that this isn't the case for women as well. It totally is. Like I've seen it and talked to people and coached people through it. But it seems to be particularly strong in men. So to finish and get to the point of what I was saying, just wrap it up, just make it more clear. That's all I'm doing. I'm trying to just make it as clear as possible so that you can't avoid this truth. That when you know you are inherently valuable, inherently worthy, you don't need to prove anything. There is nothing you can do that would make you good enough, because you already are and you always have been. You will perform at your peak. That's why my company is called the High Level Executive. The high level executive is not the executive that we would typically look at through the eyes of the past. It's the executive who is operating from a place of peace, a place of satisfaction and fulfillment. They're not depending on their employees to satisfy them or anything like that. No. But they're leading from such a place of inner power that people naturally are drawn to them. People naturally want to follow you because you're such a powerful, attractive, like energetically attractive. I don't mean like physically attractive, but energetically attractive leader. That's who is going to create the most results. Like consumers, customers, clients are becoming more and more aware of the shallow and sneaky and disconnected bullshit of a lot of salespeople and a lot of leaders. And people want to support what is good for the collective expansion of life, of the world, leading to more connection, like prioritizing these things. If you're a leader and you're not prioritizing these things and you don't even address any of the emotional stuff, you're absolutely not a high-level executive in my eyes, through the eyes of this mission that I am on and this company and this movement that I'm leading. You're not, because you're disconnected from yourself and you're disconnected from what is actually most important. The numbers are not going to bring you fulfillment. Your profit and loss statement is not going to bring you more satisfaction and joy and love and connection. It's not going to make you a better parent or partner or leader or boss or manager, whatever. It's not. However, all of the things that I'm talking about in this episode are absolutely going to contribute to greater results. And they're going to contribute to a greater experience of all those things I just listed. Your relationships, your leadership, your profits, and all of it. And you get to be happy and fulfilled, and you get to lead something that is meaningful to you. So why wouldn't you want that? I don't know. I don't know if it's because a lot of people just don't see this. They don't recognize where they're truly being driven from or motivated by. And oftentimes it's on the lower end of this or the middle. But truly great leaders stand out. We recognize them. We acknowledge them. We see them. And it's because they're operating from up here. You may or may not know that, but there's something about them that draws a lot more people to them, that gives them a lot more of a powerful influence on others. And it's because they are operating from a place of alignment with their purpose, with service and contribution and love and passion and joy. They're literally just in alignment with who they are. And I think that's what life is about. Like you are you for a reason. All the little characteristics that you have that make you who you are, you're not here to like judge those things and go, oh, I need to be different in order to be good enough. No, you are here to show up as yourself and contribute to something that is in your specific vision, that you are specifically passionate about, that would not exist were you not here living this life as who you are. I hope I'm not making that confusing, but you get the point. Anyway, that's all for this episode. I hope this was valuable. I hope this helped out. And thank you so much for the question, Justin. That was great. I saw the question and I was like, oh, I just need to make a video on this. So I appreciate you. And if you please share your feedback, share your thoughts, comments, questions, anything like that. You know, if I like the question, I might just make a whole episode on it. So that's always appreciated. And if you are not already, subscribe and like this video and share it with someone you think may need to hear it, because, you always have the opportunity to make somebody else's day better. So do it. You always have the opportunity to contribute to the growth of the people around you. So do it, and if they're open, it could have a great impact in their life. So I appreciate you. You're only one decision away from what you want. Seriously. If it's greater levels of fulfillment, you're only one decision away, because there is a process to getting there. And if you have the question, if you have the desire, that's because the answer and the solution and the path is also there, laid out for you. It already exists. You would not get the question if the answer did not exist. So, thanks for watching. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.